back from the Travel Gene. We just returned from a long 1 month sojourn, a journey, a travel to Malaysia and to Indonesia and to Qatar in the Middle East. Short layover in Qatar. This edition of the Travel Gene is going to be a little bit different than usual. What I'm going to do is basically, this is going to be an introductory commentary into the travel before we get into the meat of the thing. So I just wanted to discuss a few pointers, a few ideas. First thing I wanted to speak about was jet lag. Everybody knows about jet lag, right? It's that thing that you suffer when you change time zones, and your system becomes a little bit disrupted. Everybody that I know goes through this, particularly people who travel a lot. My dear friend Patrick Fayola, for example, travels on a very regular schedule. He travels to many of the most exotic and faraway places that you can imagine, which include long layovers, and he's mentioned to me recently that he can no longer support this constant change of fuseau horaire, or the changing of the time zones. The time zones, as you go across the time zone, tends to deplete you, tends to take something away from you. I don't know. Do you agree? Make some comments in the comment section. Let me know what you think, okay? I'd like to hear from you and have your take on it. Now, the other thing I wanted to speak about was, I'll continue on that vein first. The circadian clock. The circadian clock is that mechanism, that physiological mechanism within everybody's body that helps them to adjust to changes in time, changes in seasons, changes in the weather. It controls when we wake up, when we eat, and so forth, when we're tired, when we're not tired, when we have a burst of energy, and so forth. But generally speaking, the circadian clock is that internal mechanism which helps us to regulate our homeostasis, or to regulate our body and our bodily functions and so forth, right? So that gets all thrown out of whack when you're traveling. One good example is, every year they change the clocks ahead 1 hour or behind 1 hour. They call that, in French, they call it the changement de fuseau horaire, the change of the time, the seasonal changes. I've actually forgotten the term in English. You'll have to excuse me. But a lot of people are against that. A lot of people are against that because not only does it screw up humans, it also screws up animals. Animals are unable to adapt properly as well because of the change in the clock. So some countries are actually doing away with this change of time, and I applaud it. I think it's probably a good thing. The body adapts at its own basic rhythm. So, as you might well be aware, since we went to Malaysia, and then we went onward to Bali and Indonesia. And from there, we flew directly from Bali, Indonesia, back to Qatar, and then back to Belgium, to Brussels, Belgium, where we live. And that change of time zone threw everybody out of whack, threw everybody completely out of whack. So my little son is getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and my wife as well. I'm sleeping through because, I have a different system. I'm used to, I've traveled extensively throughout my life, and so my system is a little bit more adapted to that type of change, But still, nonetheless, I sleep very long periods of time in order to recuperate. So I'm a little bit different, okay? My system runs a little bit different. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention was, the excitement of traveling. Why travel? Traveling is, one of the most exhilarating experiences I've ever known in my life. I think it's also number one in education. That's why I take my little 4-year-old around to different places. And I particularly like the islands like Madagascar, although we haven't been there yet, and it's on the bucket list of things to visit. There's Madagascar, there's Mauritius, a number of islands, Greenland, that are in the future plans. So stick with us here on the Travel G, because we're going to be going to a lot of exotic and interesting places like Cambodia, like India, like Nepal. We're going to be going to the Amazon jungle. We're going to be going to Africa as well. These are the plans, okay? These are the plans. Of course, life doesn't always, follow a plan, but at least we have a plan, okay? And it's always good to have a plan to plan ahead, and it makes things a lot easier. We'll also be doing some local traveling. We'll be going down to Montenegro, and we'll be going to visit some of the, some of the border countries like Romania and Bulgaria and so forth. We'll be traveling by vehicle then. We'll be traveling by car. Hungary, we'll be going around Hungary, which is a very interesting country. Romania, where they have three different languages. A lot of people don't realize that. They speak German, they speak Hungarian, they speak Romanian. And so it's all very interesting. Culturally, it's interesting. And we try to bring some information, some cultural insights, and some historical background to you, our viewers here on the Travel Gene. That's our function. That's our function. That's what we try to do. We try to share. I mean, I'm a former professor and at the university, and this is one of the one of the things that's built into me, almost like a circadian clock, is trying to instruct or teach or share or learn with others, because the greatest way of teaching is learning yourself. You learn from others, right? So we share that knowledge that we acquire. This particular trip to Bali was really fascinating because Alexander learned a lot about the religion, the social structure, the culture, the language, even the language. We picked up some Bahasa, and Bahasa was an interestingly easy language to learn because it's very parallel to English, okay? In fact, there is some English influence in Bahasa. You'll hear it at times. Business is B-I-S-N-I-Z, business. So, to give you an idea, there's a parallel there, because the British exercise a lot of influence all over the world. Given the fact that it's a small island, it's quite amazing that they actually controlled colonies all the way around the world. And some people appreciate that and other people disdain that. They find that it was an imposition because the British, they went in and they basically, devalued or took away the resources from those countries. They weren't doing it entirely in benevolence, okay? So, and many times it was very harsh and cruel oversight, like in India and other places, okay? Okay, so now I wanted to speak about travel. Why travel? Because it's exhilarating. It's a life-changing experience. There's nothing more exciting to me than sitting in an airport and watching people moving around and going to different places. And also the fact that I know that we as a family are going somewhere new. We're going to discover something new, a place we've never been before. It's sort of like parachuting into a jungle, with a little less drama, of course. But it's still, nevertheless, it's a discovery. And even today, with the global transit network and the people jumping around and skipping around all over the place and going to different countries, it still becomes exciting. It's still an exciting thing to do. And some people will say, well, it's very expensive, right? It's very expensive to travel. Well, yes, it is. But also, it's also expensive to live. It's also expensive to live. So you have to take things into balance. As we were gone from here in Belgium, we weren't paying any electricity, we weren't paying gas, we weren't paying lights, we weren't paying internet and so forth. So that balances into the equation as well. It depends on how you travel as well. Do you want luxury? Do you want comfort? Are you going to plan ahead? Or you're not going to plan ahead? These all impact the monetary, the economic and financial investment that you're going to have to make to travel. Where are you traveling? Are you traveling to Switzerland? Yeah, then it's going to be expensive. Okay, it's probably twice as expensive. Switzerland is a very expensive country. Norway and some of the other, Sweden and so forth, are some of the more expensive countries. But nevertheless, if you do it the right way, if you plan and you configure things, then it's all right. Now, the other part of this equation, okay, so it's good to travel, and this time we traveled for a month, an entire month, and that's, depending on where you are, we were outside of Ubud, which is a small village in Bali, okay, it's one of the central hubs, it's in center of Bali, but we're outside the village. We're about 7 kilometers from the center of the town. So each time we had to order a vehicle to drive in. It wasn't that expensive. It was actually only about between $4 and $5 to travel each way. So it was good. So we traveled into Ubud, which was an amazing place, and we'll be sharing those adventures with you. Now, the thing is, so it's this sense of excitement, this sense of enduring excitement, a sense of learning, a sense of cultural adaptation, understanding the religion, the language, the people, how they live, why they do the things they do. There are good sides, and there are obviously bad sides as well. Bali was particularly dirty. It was dirty. People throw their trash all over the place, and that was kind of disruptive. You have a beautiful environment. God has blessed you with a beautiful, healthy green vegetation, flowing rivers, and exotic animals, flora, fauna, wildlife, and yet people disregard this. And in the materialist world we live in, you find plastic bottles, you find potato chip wrappers and candy wrappers on the side of the road. And instead of just putting them all in one place and doing that, that was and then they're building flowers everywhere, along the highways. They're planting flowers and they're making everything beautiful. But why make everything beautiful if it's in a trash heap, right? That was my question. I don't know. I think that education is an important function and people need to learn how to respect the environment. It's very important that you respect the environment that you live in. You don't want to live in a pigsty, right? No, I mean, because you live there, right? And of course that attracts vermin, rats, and rats attract, and snakes and things like that. And, Bali has at least 7 species of venomous snake, and so, and they are attracted by the rats, right? They eat the rats. So the snakes come and so forth. It creates an entire chain, okay? The other thing was the barking dogs. The barking dogs, you got these little horrible little dogs, scruffy dogs that look something like a doormat, and they're all over the place and they come after you and so on. My son was really scared at one point, and I told him, you got to buckle up. You got to buck up, my old son, and you got to take care of these dogs. And he was quite funny because he said, sorry, I'm speaking a little rapidly because I'm excited about the topic. And he said, and I told him the dog, and I looked at the dog and I did like this, and I said, you come near me and I'm going to kill you. The dog backed off. Next time we came to a barking dog, my little son said, you come near me and I kill you. So it was very, very funny, to see him, that he adapts, and they learn by imitation, right? Children learn by imitation. So I have to be really careful about what I say because he's very sharp, very smart little boy, and he picks up everything right away. So, okay, so that's part of it. Now, the other part that I want to speak about briefly, before this is the introductory video before we get into the real meat and potatoes of the travel and understanding about what we learned so we can share with you. And that is the fact that, okay, travel 4 weeks is really a limit. 4 weeks, a month is really can be a long time. It depends on the environment that you're in. If you're in a stressful environment like Asia or Africa, South American culture, India, or some other exotic culture that you're not familiar with, the food is different, the climate is different, the language is different, and all this, then 4 weeks is a lot. It's a lot. As a family, it's a lot. As an individual, it's not. But as a family, it's a lot. I would say 3 weeks is a really good time period for visiting an exotic place. And then you come back home and there's this recuperation, right? And the first day, of course, is taking all the dirty laundry. It's going to take you 2 or 3 days to get through the dirty laundry because it's funny because when you take your T-shirts or something, you give them the sniff test, you smell, they got the odor and they have an incredibly pungent odor from each individual place. It's amazing. It's like every country has its own odor. Is it the spices they use? Is it the wood that they burn? Is it the perfumes that they use, they elicit? Is it the nature itself? But I did notice that in Bali, there was this constant odor, It wasn't pleasant and it wasn't unpleasant either. It was just different. And that permeated into all my clothing and so forth. As you're going to see, we stayed in a truly remarkable place called Dadari Villas, and I would highly recommend it if you do decide one day to go to Bali. And I have a number of drivers, the numbers from drivers, because we use different drivers, and they were all equally very good, but there was one that really stood out among the others, and I'm going to put those down in the comment section. What I would like is I would like you out there, our viewing audience here on the Travel Gene, to make some comments and give us your insights, give us your input. Tell us what you'd like to see. Tell us what you think. Have you traveled there before? Have you been to Bali in Indonesia? Have you been to Malaysia? Have you been to the Middle East? Share with us your experience as well so that we can learn from you. And by the same token, we can pick up a few hints and tips for when we return. We probably will return to Indonesia, the 170,000 I think they said, or 17,500 islands. In any event, there's Sumatra, which is an amazing place where they have the orangutans. There are the islands, the Rinca Islands and the Komodo Islands, where we wanted to see the Komodo dragon in the wild, but we were unable to because of the choppy waters, given the tail end of the monsoon. We were in the tail end of the monsoon. It was raining every single day, and the monsoon, unfortunately, came late this year, and we were unable to fulfill our plans and to travel by boat. So we did stay entirely in Bali, and I don't regret that. It was a really interesting experience. And we wanted to go down to Nusa Penida, which is an island, Nusa Penida and Lombogan, Lombogan, the island to the southeast of Bali. But then again, when we had made plans to go to the port and we had to cancel because of the choppy seas, the boats, the ferries were just not going. And as I understood it, one ferry actually overturned. So we missed that one, luckily, because safety is not the primary concern on some of these boats. So you want to be careful. You want to be really cautious about the boats that you do take, especially if you've got a young child or family members, with you. You want to make sure that you're very careful about that. I'll speak a little bit more about the details of our trip as we get into it, okay? Because immigration was a big problem, both in Malaysia and both in Indonesia. We had big problems with immigration. They were the most unfriendly people I'd ever met in my life. And the Balinese people assured me that the immigration were not from Bali, but rather they were from Java, the island of Java, from Jakarta, seeking out work in Bali, because Balinese people, and it's true, the Balinese people were extremely welcoming, extremely kind. Some were extremely poor. They're extremely poor, and they rely on tourism. Unfortunately, tourism is a double-edged sword, as you might imagine, and the tourists bring a lot of riffraff to these destinations, and and you get this savage tourism where they don't respect the nature. And I'll speak a little bit more about that in detail, in depth, as we work our way through the various videos that I'm going to be composing. You have to be patient with me because I'm not as fast as my wife. She has her own channel, Liana Welch Vlog, and that's a very good channel. It's in Armenian language, but you can pretty much figure out what's going on because I also comment in her videos, and I run a parallel video here in English for English, those people who understand English. Or at times I can explain things in French if you like, or German, or Spanish, or Italian. No problem. If you want some particular explanation, I can provide that as well. It's no problem. And now Bahasa, right? I can speak Bahasa. Saya hanya bercakap sedikit bahasa Indonesia. I speak a little bit of Indonesian now. Okay, so we picked that up on the road. So that's always a handy little tool. Language is always a handy little tool, and that's another point I wanted to make is when you go to a place, try and learn a little bit of the language. Try and learn how to say how much is this, a hello, goodbye, and how are you, and I only speak a little of your language, okay? Those types of expressions are going to take you very far in another language, in another culture. And another thing, it reinforces your sense of self-confidence, and you're able to speak. And don't worry about making mistakes because they expect it. The only problem is when I spoke Indonesian with people, they automatically assumed that I spoke fluent Bahasa, and they would, and I couldn't understand. I said, well, slow down, please. I'm trying to make sense of it. But, the good thing about Bahasa or Malaysian, it's the same language, basically. It's basically mutually intelligible between the two countries. They do have different terminology and stuff, but basically the language is a lingua franca, and they can understand one another between Malaysia and Indonesia, although they're often constantly in conflict over land, such as in East Sarawak, which used to be Borneo, East and West Sarawak, used to be Borneo. So a lot of fascinating places to visit, a lot of things to do, a lot of things to understand. Okay, so where was I before I lost my train of thought? Okay, let's see. So traveling is a great thing, but you need that rest period in between. You need a rest period in between. If you're going to be doing these exotic trips, I would recommend, if you're going to take 3 weeks, take 6 weeks off. Or take even more, take 2 months off, It should be the exception, not the rule. If you're traveling too often, it's going to wear you out. It'll wear you out, it'll tire you, it'll age you, prematurely age you. Okay, not that it's worked on me, right? Okay, I'm still 36. Well, at least in spirit, right? As my friend said once in Abu Dhabi, he said, "Are you 36?" I said, No, I'm not 36. No, I gave him my age and I said, maybe 36. Yes, maybe 36. Okay, so anyway, so this is the opening spiel, the opening introduction to what's going to follow, which is a series of this. And what I'm also going to introduce is I went through my computer yesterday, my computer files yesterday, and I've organized everything. So I'm also going to go back through my experiences in Iraq during the war, my experiences in Afghanistan during the war, and explain a little bit about that, how despite the fact that I was against the war in Iraq, I still went nevertheless, and there are reasons for this, well-founded reasons. And I think that when you hear that, you'll understand, particularly my friends who are Arabic, who didn't look too favorably upon the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003. So, with all this being said, I'll also be doing, some of my earlier travels throughout the Middle East, through Israel, through India, through Greece, around Europe, and so forth. I got many, 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 many photos, and not so many videos. So there'll be like a photo expose with some commentary written underneath, and I hope that you'll enjoy that. I'll be matching music up to it it takes a long time because I work hard on the graphics. I work hard to get the right music to put you in the proper atmosphere so that you're traveling along as well, at the same time. Okay. And I keep journals. I do keep journals. So it helps me to remember where I've been, what I've done at that particular time period. So they are inclusive. They do incorporate a lot of detail, and incredibly, it helps the memory. It really helps the memory. By writing all this stuff down, you physically are registering these events in your deep memory. Okay, so that's about it. That's about it. That's everything I wanted to say. Please share, like, and subscribe, as we always say, right? Share, like, and subscribe. Be sure to hit that notification bell so that when something new comes up, you'll be the first to know. We really appreciate you. We really appreciate our subscribers. We appreciate the support that you give us. I've got no support yet because you need 1,000 subscribers in order to get any kind of financial backing or support. So I'm hopeful. I might have a couple hundred subscribers at this point. Please share with your friends if you like this, if you like what I'm doing, if you like what we're doing as a family. Help us, support us, tell your friends about us. Be sure to subscribe, okay, here on the Travel Gene. And we promise you many more interesting adventures, as well as the local adventures. We're going to help you to discover Belgium and what it's like living in Belgium as a foreigner. I now have dual nationality. I'm American and Belgian. And I have Armenia residency, and I have a 10-year residency in the UAE, so I'm sort of international, right? I don't know where I belong or who I belong to, which is probably good in this day and age, right? I'm really a global citizen, so to speak. Okay, so that's it, my friends. That's it, and I look forward to bringing you some new updates and some new videos, and the next one will concern our preparation or our departure to Qatar, and then from Qatar to Malaysia, and then we'll be going through Malaysia, and then cover our 3 almost 4 weeks in Bali, Indonesia, and what we experienced there, and then our return flight to Qatar, our overnight in Qatar, and then returning to Brussels. Okay, so stick with us here on the Travel Gene. Always great to hear from you. We really appreciate you 1 million gazillion %. Thank you very much.